I don't particularly enjoy my life, and I haven't since childhood. Earlier in childhood as well. I just haven't really been that jazzed about it all. And I've worked out a structure, I've worked out a framework where I can logically deduce what is right and what is wrong, and I can therefore see that this is the right way to go, and I put what I can towards that. It's kind of hard though, because sometimes I just don't have the energy to spend on that. Because, what I deem to be the greatest good is making the nicest story. That's what I think. And I think humanity is a pretty good story. I think it's headed into a nice direction. I'm not sure if I'll be able to see much of a good story, but I get little snippets here and there that are nice. I get little bits of niceness in my life. And I think that, well, that's something I can strive for, and that's something that I can see I can feel some emotion about that, where we should aim for the best story. We should aim for the nicest towns and the nicest people and making the nicest world where life is easier and things are nicer. Because I don't think that wars and violence are good stories. I don't really like those in stories. Because some of the best stories, some of the most fantastical stories, the elements which make them good are not the fighting and the wars and the plagues and such. In fact, it's always the positives which make it good. And so that's always what I've stuck with since I was a kid, that's what I work towards. Anything that can help make a story good. Like even this park. This park right here, I actually kind of like that it's grown up. It's kind of nice. And because there's no standing water, there's really no mosquitoes, so it's actually pretty enjoyable. This park, yeah, it's beautiful. It's a nice element to the story of the world. Even some of those buildings that they build that I don't particularly like. I think they're ugly, but you know what? I'm sure it gives nice housing to some people, and it still contributes to a good story for them. Maybe not as good as it could if it's built differently, but it's still a good story. And so I've always been kind of driven by that, because I found that to be the best and simplest way to be directed well. Make a happy story out of the world. But I never really particularly enjoyed my life, nor the story. It's nice, and I know I should like it, but I just never do. Now, it used to be that I had really bad depression, and a lot of that was hormone based. I had a gender transition, and that actually helped a lot. And getting that hormonal depression aside really cleared things up a lot for me. I would have killed myself if I didn't have gender transition. Testosterone did some weird things to my mind, really weird. But now that I have that mess in my mind cleared away, I feel more like my mind it might be a bit plain and logical and not very emotional. And yet I'm also a very emotional person. I'm just very weirdly emotional, where I will find some artwork very emotional, or I'll find a daydream very emotional. I'll feel like a lot about that, but I never enjoy the whole thing. I have a hard time with that. Some of the things I enjoy is, I sometimes enjoy food, but I can never eat food as a form of enjoyment. I enjoy music, but I couldn't enjoy music as a form of enjoyment, really. It's not always entertainment. I don't like having music playing. I like fixing things. I like the feeling of taking something that was used, and with only a little bit of work, I increase its usefulness by a lot. And I think it makes a beautiful story, the fact that whenever I restore something, all of those thousands of hours that people spent back in the 1800s and the 1900s making that said thing, whether it be a tool or whatever, all of that time that they put into it will not go to waste. And whereas if I hadn't restored it, all their time would have made a tool that would have lasted 50 years. But I repaired it, so now they made a tool that lasted 100 years. Because that tool that I fixed, whatever it may be, will last for another 40 years, another 50 years. And in a way, I feel like that whenever I restore something, I get to be connected to something in the past. But not necessarily even that. I'm getting a little emotional from this. Oh. I feel like fixing something that somebody else spent a lot of time making, even if they were paid to make it, even if they made it and they didn't really care about it, they just made it to feed their family, it's still good that they made it. It's still something amazing. And by me fixing something up, I make their impact upon the world bigger. And they now have a bigger legacy thanks to me. Because I've helped make what they did last a lot longer. Because it was 100 people put 1,000 hours into making, say, a Black & Decker drill from the 1950s. And I just put 1 hour into it. And now that 1,000 hours that they put into making that goes twice as far. 1 hour to double how far 1,000 hours of work goes. That's amazing. And it really adds up to where it's like it multiplies how efficient they were. Because they could have spent 2,000 hours making that power drill, and it still probably only would have lasted 60 years. But if you have one helpful person to spend 1 hour in the future, half a century later, then all of a sudden what you do now will last twice as long. And if there's a second person 100 years from now to also fix it, it will last 3 times as long. And so there's something beautiful about that. I enjoy miniature things. I find them cute. I enjoy curating nature. Like I'm still thinking about cutting little paths in this park that hasn't been mowed in months. Partly because whenever they mow this thing, they just clear cut it all. And I'm thinking it might be nice to show people that you can have little paths and still have stuff grown up to where you still get to see nature. And you don't need to clear cut it all. You can actually have a mix. And I think I could do that. So people will be less incentivized just to clear cut it all. But aside from those little niceties, it's a little bit difficult to live this life because it doesn't seem like much really adds up to much sometimes. We need really good virtual reality. We need something I can get lost in, I guess. I just, yeah. I have to live for the little things. But it's hard to find enough little things to live for. I guess that's kind of what it is. And sometimes you feel like there should be a big thing, and there isn't. Just a bunch of little things. It's kind of hard to live on little pleasures sometimes. I think that's just because I don't quite have enough yet. I don't know.